Okay, everybody, I have the honor of speaking with somebody who is directly involved with the events at Gen Con 2022. This is Simon Sangpukdee, who is a judge volunteer for the events at Upper Deck at Gen Con 2022. So, hi, Simon, how are you doing?
Hello, hello. I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I just finished a randomizer game. I do those on
Oh,
Thursday. It was a really fun one.
nice.
Um, we play the randomizer game, and then I do a league that week where everybody gets to play the game that week and compete for scores. So
Oh,
this
very.
was, yeah, this was randomizer number 90. So my 90th one. I
Wow.
can't
That's a
believe
lot
it's
of
been that many.
games.
It's a lot of games. We've been doing the league for about 60 about of those weeks. So it's been going on for a while. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
awesome. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, I love the idea of the randomizer. I'm very bad at it. Like the few times I've like randomized my games of Legendary, it just turns out to be like a brutal beatdown.
Oh yeah, it can
But
be brutal for sure.
yeah, when I usually play casually at home with my friends, I think, and my story is not going to be unique. I'm sure most of your viewers will understand. I like to do it thematically. So yeah, oh gosh, I mean, going back like when Dark City first came out, I really like using Mister Sinister and like trying to get Madeline Pryor as the Demon Queen. There's that one scheme if you remember, and just pick X-Men or X Force or whatever. So yeah, I try to be thematic as possible when I casually play. Anyway.
I totally get it. I love doing that. That's part of the beauty of the game because you can do a thematic game, you could do a randomized game, something in
Oh yeah.
between.
No,
Uh,
definitely.
I think we've talked about it in the Discord a bit before, and we broke it up into three schools. Like you can do a thematic game, you can do a randomized game, or you can do a game based on mechanics you like, and you can mix and match any of those. And that's one of the things that we love about this game. So much
Oh, that's
versatility.
exciting. I've never done that one where you pick a mechanic you like and just revolve it around that. I have to
Oh,
try
yeah,
that now.
it's a lot
So
of
that's
fun. I do a bunch of different kinds of streams. One of them is a viewer request where people can submit setups for me and I play them. And I say I like to pick two different kinds of requests, something super thematic or something super mechanically interesting. And there was a
uh,
setup submitted called discard for bonuses, and was just what it sounded like. A bunch of heroes that all it was like Angel and Beta Ray Bill. They all had the discard mechanics all
oh
together
right.
with enemies like Belasco who also discards, and it was just ton of discard bonuses all over the place, and it was a blast.
Nice. No, yeah, I think that's one of the things that has attracted me to the game. Initially was its versatility, and one of the reasons I've been playing it for, I mean, what, we're 10 years into it now. I don't believe it's been 10 years. So isn't that amazing? 10 years
That's
of
incredible.
Legendary.
I only got into it like 2018, 2019, but,
Oh,
the fact
really?
that yeah, I haven't been playing, at the scope of things that long, but, to learn that it, was reaching the 10-year anniversary this year with regular expansions coming out, every year, and it's still staying fresh and still has a following, that's pretty impressive.
Can I share with you all my story of how I met Devin Low?
Absolutely.
Oh my God, this is embarrassing. So it was Gen Con 2014. I actually was a judge for another game at the time, but I had a close professional association with Jason Brenner, who was at the time was the brand manager at Upper Deck. And he was the one that really drove like the marketing apparatus to push Legendary out there at the forefront. Okay. So at Gen Con 2014, Upper Deck always has a party at Gen Con, or they used to. It's always at the Hard Rock Cafe, and one of the volunteers, uh, he says, "Hey Simon, that's Devin Low over there," and I'm like, "Oh really? That's the guy. That's the dude." He's like, "Yeah." So I already had a couple of drinks to me at this point, so I was really giddy and nervous, and my slightly inebriated state like magnified that. So I went up to him and I gushed like a total fanboy. It was a little embarrassing in retrospect. He was super kind, and I distinctly remember telling him because so you said you got into the game 2018, right, Bagel?
Yeah, about that
Around that
time.
time.
Mhm.
Okay, so I still remember around that time. So the game came out like November 2012. I remember like a lot of the online discussions, like 2013, and it spills over into 2014, where people were complaining about Spider-Man, like the
Mm,
Spider-Man that comes in the core set. You know, like,
right.
oh, he's too weak, da da da. He's hard to combo off of, blah 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 blah. Um, I didn't feel that way. I thought the mechanics of how Spider-Man plays fits thematically with his character as we envision it in the comics. At least that's my viewpoint, my opinion. And I told Devin Low that. I was like, don't listen to the, I think I said something to the fact, don't listen to the haters on
Yeah.
the internet. I
That's
said,
great advice in general, sure.
yeah, no, definitely. So I said that to him. I said, I really like how Spider-Man plays, and he's one of my favorites. And I'm not sure if like he was just humoring me, but he's like, "Oh, that's really nice of you to say. I really appreciate that." Da da. And then like I ranted and raved on for a little bit. Like I really like the Dark City expansion. At that point, Fantastic Four had already come out, and I went on, and like so at one point, when you're at a party like that, you have to mingle. And there was a lull in the conversation. So he was about to mingle, and because I was again inebriated, I'm like, no, wait, don't go. I have more to talk to you about. I thankfully I didn't grab onto his arm like a crazy stalker person, but I was like, no, wait, don't go. I really want to pick your brain. Like, what's your inspiration? And I'm sure he told me, but I don't remember the rest of that night.
Sure.
So, but no, that's how I met him. I found out later that he's initially, or his main like real life job at the time, I don't know if this is still true, like he was a developer for that really popular like iPad game, or for Plants vs Zombies.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay. I didn't
yeah,
know
he
that.
was on the team for that. So he, his game design knowledge is really solid. This is why we have such a masterpiece in Legendary. But
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's how. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying I know he used to work for, Wizards of the Coast for Magic the Gathering, and that Legendary
Ah,
wasn't his day job, so, you can tell the influences there, but that fact that you say he's developer for games like, Plants vs. Zombies also makes a lot of sense.
yeah. No, no. So yeah, super. I only met him that one time. And yeah. So that's pretty much the how I met him at Gen Con. So speaking of Gen Con, I don't want to ramble. So would you like with me to share with your viewers like a behind the scenes peek of like how we do things for Legendary at Gen Con, or is there a specific point where you want me to focus on?
Sure, I had a
For
couple
sure.
of questions about it, so
Sure.
about the Legendary 5K specifically, and,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that interests me the most is, I get so you also are involved in the Versus system tournaments as well?
Um, yes and no. I'm pretty much the floor manager when those versus system tournaments go on. So I don't directly judge, but I have to make sure like, things are moving from round to
Gotcha.
round.
I can imagine that a game like Versus that's directly competitive is a bit more straightforward to run a tournament for than something like Legendary, which is, cooperative, semi-competitive. So I'm just very interested in how the scoring system was developed for this
Ah,
semi-competitive game, and how it was decided to be scored in the way that it is. So that's something that I
sure.
really wanted to know.
No, no, those are excellent questions. All right, let me pull up my notes here. So, um, where to begin? Okay, so you use the term semi-competitive. In 2015 or late 2014, I was approached by the former brand manager, and he's like, "Simon, you have a lot of judging experience." Which I used to judge a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments back in the day, so I have practical experience running tournaments. And Jason Brenner, the former brand manager, knew me from that, and so he's like, "You have a lot of experience running tournaments. I want a." He had already ran a fairly successful tournament in 2014. In 2021, the big set that was showcased was Villains. Okay.
Mhm.
And they used like a very primitive software to like resolve like tournament pairings and everything. Um, anyway, so it's like, okay, I was a little taken aback because like, this is a multiplayer game. Like, are we just gonna like count victory points? Do we want to do it like Swiss rounds? And he was like, Sure, I trust you. Do whatever. That's essentially how that conversation got started.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? A lot of people like to think like these industry professionals like have everything. There's like a master plan. No, they make it up as they go along. So yeah, it's true. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. Okay, sometimes you can get inspiration from impromptu decisions like that. But that was he pretty much was like, yes, just do it that way. I trust you. And so I looked at what was done in 2014 for villains, which they pretty much did Swiss rounds. They cut to it. I think they cut to a top 32, then a top 16, 32, 16, then 8, then 4. The tournament took a while. So so I'm like, okay, we'll go with that structure. All right. We'll do 4 players per table. Okay. Because in my experience, the game kind of gets super brutal and breaks down with 5 players.
Yeah, it can.
It can get which may not be a bad thing for a tournament setting, but still, I thought 4 players is reasonable. We'll cap it at 4 players per table. And again, we'll use victory points as the marker. Okay. I was considering for a long time, like, should they be an added benefit to a table that actually beats their mastermind? Like everyone gets another plus 10 victory points across the board. But then I was like, I don't know. I finally decided to ditch it. I decided not to go that route. The key thing was the tiebreakers. Okay, how do you how do you do the tiebreakers? Because you're going to get more than a couple times where it's all right. Where's my sheet? There we go. Where people have the same amount of victory points. Whether they've killed the mastermind, which did not happen this year at all.
Really?
Or no.
I can imagine it was a Killmonger was the mastermind for a lot of
Yes.
them. That explains a lot.
Yes, it was Killmonger. I'm going to say right now on the record, I kind of regret using Killmonger now, because I thought he would. Actually, it wasn't just really Killmonger. I just thought the scheme would do a better job of making the tournament go faster. But anyway, I'm jumping here.
Sure.
So the important thing was the tiebreaker, because there's going to be a lot of situations. Actually, again, I want to be transparent with the community. Okay. So it was 2015. Unfortunately, I don't have my notes at that time. I remember the set we were showcasing was Secret Wars Volume 1. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one where it's like you had a bunch of crazy masterminds that would ascend. So villains that would ascend to masterminds, and it just got like nuts. So unfortunately my notes from that era are long gone. So it happened, I think, round 1, where Simon, I was the head judge for the event, and someone said, Simon, I got a table here where like they're tied for second place. So I don't know who to do second and third. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good. What do we do? I looked at Jason Brenner, and he looked at me. I'm like, okay, let's do this. The first tiebreaker says let's see who has more mastermind tactics in their victory pile. I think that's a fair first tiebreaker. Okay, so I went to the table. Anyone's got it? They're like, no, we didn't hit squat. I remember that exactly. We didn't hit squat. I'm like, okay, and I'm making this up on the spot at this point, but I'm trying to make it fair as well. So before I open my mouth, I would consult with the company rep first, because ultimately he'll be responsible, right? I could blame it. I could blame it all on him. So I'm thinking. So I said, all right, gentlemen, players, count your victory pile. Who's got more villains? Who has more villains, including henchmen? Who has more? And that one worked. Like one person had less, so he wound up being third place in that table in second. So that taught me a valuable lesson right there on the spot. I was like, I need to write this down and keep it standardized and keep this, And so so in the end, what we came up with. So yeah, the first tiebreaker is whoever has more mastermind tactics in their victory pile. The second tiebreaker is whoever has more villains. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoever has more villains, not including henchmen. So don't include any henchmen, just villains, okay, in the victory pile. The third tiebreaker is whoever has more total villains. So that's with henchmen, okay? There's another tiebreaker after that, which I've actually had to use. Uh, if that's still tied, we now count who has more rescued bystanders in their victory pile.
Interesting.
And the last one, which I remember using in like 2018, they even had the same amount because they were 0. The last one, whoever has the least amount of cards in their deck, because the game kind of rewards
Oh,
thinning your
wow.
deck out, right?
Right.
KOing like the starting hand. I only had to use that once. So yeah. And so that's so again, so all this whole process has been like a trial by fire to codify, to give the players a fun but equitable and standardized play experience. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so and I've debated too, like, so we do Swiss rounds. And what I've done in recent, I think I did this, I started doing like 2016, now that I think about it, where I would do like 3 or 4 rounds of Swiss and I would cut to top 16. I take after Swiss, the player generates who are the top 16 players after Swiss. Those 16 players, it's those are your top 4 tables, right?
Sure.
And what I did one time, and it took forever, from top 16, I went to top 8. Okay. Because in a traditional TCG, CCG 1v1 game like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, or whatever, you would do that, right? Top 16, then top 8, then top 4, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
So I did the top 8. It just took too long. It took too long. And then, and from top 8 went to top 4. So the following year, I talked it over with the upper deck officials. At this point, so this is 2017. So at this point, the brand manager, Jason Brenner, just gave me like carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. So I talked with their organized play specialist, a wonderful, wonderful person who does a lot for the community, named Mark Shaunessy. Mark is severely
Mhm.
overworked at Upper Deck, and he's done a lot for the community that a lot of people don't see.
I've caught him
Uh,
on stream a couple of times. Seems like a very nice guy and very involved in especially verses, so it's been cool to chat with him a couple of times.
yeah, no, Mark, Mark has been with the company forever, like 2005 or something like that.
Wow.
And he was like doing on the sports side, and then when we move over to entertainment, like in addition to his regular duties, he would be a regular playtester. Like he was one of the OG playtesters for Legendary. So yeah, so he knows the game in and out. Anyway, so I clear it with Mark, saying, Mark, from now on, we'll do three or 4 rounds of Swiss, depending on the amount of people. We'll do top 16, and from the top 16, we take the top player from each table. So it goes from 16 directly to top 4, just to save time. And Mark was like,
Mhm.
all right, sounds good. Let's do it. And we've been doing it that way ever since. Yeah, I just realized I gave you a huge amount of information there without
Oh, no, I
break.
got it. Yeah, no,
Okay,
that's a good way to speed up. I do have questions about it too
yes,
because it's it's
please.
it's cool. It's nice to hear how it's evolved over time. Trial and error, like you mentioned. Sometimes that's the way to do it, and it just evolves
Hmm.
and gets better and better. Um, have you ever observed any of the fan created online tournaments that occur with Legendary or leagues or tournaments, that kind of thing? And or do you think there's any other viable ways that it could have evolved and gone from like a different seed beginning than it did right now? Or is this, do you
Oh
think, the optimal way?
no, I do not. Okay, I will state for the record, this is not the optimal way. This is not the
Mhm.
optimal way. At least it's not in my opinion. At least in my opinion, excuse me. Because I believe the joy of Legendary. I know the victory points are there and everything, but um a very experienced, intelligent person who helped run events for me at one Gen Con told me to my face, and told the upper deck person to their face. So I was like, I feel we're shoehorning Legendary. He used the word shoehorn as a verb.
Mm,
I feel we're shoehorning Legendary into a typical TCG tournament structure. And by using the word shoehorning, he says he doesn't think it's appropriate and it fits.
mhm.
So that's why I'm making that statement now. No, it's not the optimal way. I had to do it this way because I have, unfortunately, personnel constraints. Okay, I only have so many people to help me run the tournament, and this is the best way with the resources I have to run the tournament this way in such a competitive style. Where everyone is, they're not really working cooperation with the people at their table. They're here to like score victory points. Though, so like, you know what? I want that guy to escape the city next turn because you know what? That player across from me, he happened to draw an extra card because he killed the Savage Land Mutates last turn. He drew an extra card. So when that when that villain escapes with that bystander, everyone's losing a card. And I got a wound in my hand. So I'm good. I'm just chucking that wound. And, there's nothing wrong with that kind of competitive play in certain games. Okay. And I would argue there's a place for it in Legendary. But to make it the showcase 5K event, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and specifically when you mention like the logistics and resources, does that specifically have to refer to judging and observing and making sure everything goes down the way it's supposed to,
Oh yeah.
just over the different games? And this format, you're saying, if I can just kind of restate what you said, makes it so that it's easier for the judges to observe when it's done in more of a victory point based competitive scenario.
Correct. Mainly because I can't. So in a normal TCG setting, Magic the Gathering, or I'll use Yu-Gi-Oh because that's my realm of expertise. Official Yu-Gi-Oh tournament policy states there should be one judge for every 32 players, which is manageable. Okay. You can't use that ratio for Legendary if I had, let's say, 20 tables, and let's say each table was a team, right? And so I can't, with the amount of judges I have, it's not possible to make sure everyone's playing fairly. Because we're on the same team, the incentive and the ease of cheating goes up astronomically, right? I could just like in 30 minutes, me and my pals call it, hey, judge, we beat the mastermind, and maybe we didn't really play the game. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, so we do it this way, since it's every man or woman for themselves, everyone's watching each other. I do get players that'll be like, judge. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, can I ask my opponent over there, the person sitting across from me, to count out his victory pile for me right now in the middle of the game? I'm like, yes, the victory pile is public knowledge. He is obligated to tell you the truth, how many points he currently has. So they're keeping an eye on each other for me. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially the part about if they're working cooperatively, it's hard to observe. No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so that's pretty much how the game has evolved. There have been growing pains. So we used a tournament software that is now officially dead in the ground. RIP Mantis. It was called the Mantis Tournament Software.
Oh, okay.
Mantis was around when Upper Deck had its entertainment division, Upper Deck Entertainment, which died a horrible death in 2010, I believe. Okay, as that whole division got dissolved. The Mantis software is a legacy relic of those times, and we had a professional association with the developer of the software, and I asked him. Actually, I was working a Yu-Gi-Oh event at the time, and his name is Mickey. I'm like, Mickey, this is Legendary. It's a multiplayer game. Do you think you could retrofit it to like work for Legendary? And here's the scoring system, how it would work, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, I could do it. And it worked for a while we got him 2016, 2017, 2018, just before the pandemic, 2019. Okay, the software was working. My understanding is it finally died when like there's how like Microsoft updates happen and stuff like that, and it
Sometimes
breaks
they're just
certain programs.
incompatible at some point.
Yes, and it was completely incompatible. This year, my greatest fear was our tournament software, because in the discussions, so I take Legendary very seriously. I love the community. I love the game. I love the product. And I already had preliminary discussions about Gen Con legendary 5K tournament starting in February with Mark Shaunessy. And I asked him about the software. He's like, well, Simon, about that, Mantis finally died. So we're in contact with the developer. So every head judge never wants to hear these words. We're in contact with the developer. It's like, oh my God, am I the guinea pig? Is my tournament going to be the guinea pig for your developer? And things are going to go horribly wrong. Yeah, it was very scary. Actually, I'm surprised. So I'm jumping around from back and forth here, but this is a really funny story.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, please go ahead.
So what happened? So this is the 18th of August. We're recording this, right? So yeah, 2 weeks ago on the 6th of August, when this tournament was starting, I had prepared for every contingency, and I went out of my way to break the software preemptively, so in order to identify any bugs and everything. And we oh my gosh, there was one awful bug where, like, if an odd amount of players entered the tournament, the software would drop players like until it had a number of tables divisible by 4. Okay. Which is really messed up. You could lose like a few players that way. All right. I remember emailing Mark in the middle of the night. It was a Saturday. I remember that. I emailed him the Saturday before, and I'm like, this is a problem. And he's like, oh my God. So luckily the developer was on top of it. But what happened the Saturday of Gen Con for the 5K? So I think we sold out for the event. So it was 64 players. But a few players didn't show up. And so my scorekeeper and the OP specialist dropped those players from the event. And it screwed up the pairings entirely.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like it was really weird. It happened while I was giving my announcement. Do you want to talk about stuff going wrong? The PA system did not work.
Perfect.
So I had to give my announcements twice, once to the front half of the room and once to the back half. In a way, I'm glad it happened, because that's when the scorekeeper noticed that the pairings were all messed up and the players were already seated. They had already were seating, ready to go round 1. So my scorekeeper comes up and whispers to me, it's like, Simon, once you're done, tell everyone to go back to the pairings board. We have new pairings. I'm like, okay, fine. So yeah, so that's what happened. So we had to repair again. At least it only happened the first round. The players were very happy because, those 10th anniversary promos that came out for Gen Con. Oh my God. Man, Mark Shaunessy was so protective of those freaking promos. It was like Fort Knox. He was like, Simon, make sure no one touches these, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
I can imagine.
Well, so here's the thing. He printed a lot of them. Okay. Once his podcast is done, I got to tell Mark to listen to this, because he's going to think it's funny. Because I told him to his face, I'm like, Mark, I think you're being a little overprotective, because he was very stingy with those promos. So like if you entered into any of our events, like a beginner game or win a box for Legendary, you got 1 promo. So I asked him, Mark, if they enter the 5K, how many promos do they get? He's like, they get 1. I'm like, Mark, they paid $12. Come on, man. Let me give out some, like 2 or 3. He's like, no. The whole point is to make them rare, and you got to be at Gen Con for that. I'm like, oh my goodness. So when the repairing happened, I looked at Mark, like, I'm giving him extra promos, and he's like, fine, just make him happy. So I made him something. I said something to the effect of, like, ladies and gentlemen, I really do apologize for this. To make it up to you, I'll give you another second promo. And everyone
I'm sure
cheered.
they loved that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think they cared more about that than the tournament.
I mean, hey, you gotta love promos. I actually, I was lucky enough. I have some awesome members of the community who were there doing a lot of stuff, helping me out, and they sent me a couple of them. So I actually have
nice.
a few of these awesome, and they look so much better in person too than the images. And
Oh my gosh.
I can see why they were so highly coveted. Absolutely.
Oh no, yeah. Mark did that was Mark's brainchild. He did a really good job getting like the printer to do that kind of job and make the promo look so good, so well. That's and great. Beautiful.
Yeah, hats off to him for that, and the pairings and everything. Wonderful.
Oh my goodness. No. So yeah. So as people know, I'm giving you a peek behind the curtain. No one. This is how the sausage gets made.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not pretty, but in the end, I think it worked out well. What I actually did, which so we had giant cards at the event as well, and I think the giant cards were pretty much like I want to say, yeah, they were pretty much like giant card versions of the promo cards. Okay, the 10th anniversary promos. Because I remember like the first player got like that Clea, that's a
Yeah,
promo.
the
Okay,
purple gem one. That looked
yeah.
I saw the photo of that. It looked great.
Right. So I asked Mark, I'm like, how do we want to do this? You know, like, how do you want to give out the promos? He's like, Simon, you make it up. Now, in 2019, my favorite set, and you're going to understand why it's my favorite set because I'm heavily biased. Revelations came out in the
I know why
summer.
it's your favorite set.
Yes, you
You're in
know
that
why?
expansion.
Yes, I am. I
You're
am
the
the
dog
dog
show
show
judge.
judge. Yes, because my beagle is on that card.
Is that
And
actually your beagle? That's incredible. I
yes,
used that card today in my setup, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm talking to him later." That's
nice,
incredible.
nice. Yes.
What is your beagle's name?
Gizmo.
Oh, okay. So,
Yes,
it's,
Gizmo.
Simon and Gizmo and
Yes,
Wanda
stars.
on the card.
Yes, and Wanda. Yep.
That's wonderful.
So in 2019, when Revelations came out, uh, there we had some like extra like foils of the I think it's the basic scheme. It's the Cosmic
Yeah.
Cube one, right? I believe.
Mhm,
Yeah. And it's a foil. It's got like Loki on it and everything.
mhm.
So I remember, like, I think it was like top 16 in 2019. I told the top 16 table, so the four tables of the top 16. I said, okay, people, if anyone rescues me and they get me and my dog in the victory pile, stop the game, raise your hand. I'm giving you a foil of this scheme.
Wow.
And they freaking loved it. Mark was a little resistant at first because Mark is very protective of his promos.
Sure.
But I'm like, Mark, come on, we got some extras. Okay, fine. And then he could see how much the players liked it. So going off of that, I told Mark, Mark, it's a shame we don't have any copies of Revelations open because then I would just like stick the dog show judge in random tables. And Mark is like, well, hold on. I think I've got some open product lying around here somewhere. And he found me two copies of the dog show judge. So I'm like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. I had 16 tables. Okay, I had 16 tables for the 3 rounds of Swiss, pretty much consistently.
Mhm.
So, in front of the other judges, I had someone roll a 20-sided die. So if it was 17 through 20, we re-roll. Okay,
Mhm.
and they rolled the die twice. And whatever the die landed on, that table would get the dog show judge inserted into the villain deck. All right. And if they
Mhm.
managed to rescue me, they got the promo. Yeah. I mean, that promo, they got the giant card.
Sure.
I felt
That's a
really,
really cool way.
I mean, it was fun. They thought it was cool. I felt really bad. There was this, there was this one player for rounds 1, 2, and 3. He was always at the table where I inserted the dog show judge, special bystander,
Mhm.
and he never got it.
Oh, no.
He never got I felt so bad for him. I was like, "Oh, no, I'm sorry." So, yeah. Oh, but you know what I did on the side, on the sly? Yeah, because at the end, I thanked him because he did okay in the event but he didn't get into top 16. I remember that. But I thanked him for his time for sticking around. I asked him if he had fun, and he's like, "Yeah." And then I said, I commiserated. I was like, "Yeah, I saw you. You were at every table where the dog show judge was, and you never got." He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Hold on, buddy. Stick around for a second." And I asked Mark, like, "Hey, man, this guy, he's had bad luck. I don't want to give him an extra promo." And Mark's like, "Yeah, sure, do that." So I gave him an extra 10th anniversary promo. So he appreciated that at least. So
Oh, great.
yeah.
Yeah. I
um,
can imagine how frustrating that could have been for him. It sounded like he was a good sport about it too, up until the point where he was able to get the promo.
Right, right. No, and again, it's not like he and no, the player. Believe me, I've dealt with some entitled players. Like, man,
Mhm.
this I got screwed over by this and that and blah blah blah. And usually, as a customer service thing, I say, "Oh, I'm really sorry you had that experience. I do appreciate your time." And then I look for a diplomatic way to walk away.
Of course, of
But this
course.
player was like super nice. He was super friendly, and he stuck out all 3 rounds of Swiss. He could have dropped by the end of round 2 when he knew he was not going to get. Like, no way. Even if he got in first place at his third round table. There is no way. He was just too far behind in points. He's not making top 16. But he played it out, because he was having fun. And man, there was plenty of product. So I have that discretion to give players stuff like that.
Of course, and I'm sure you
Um,
appreciate it. That's a pretty neat story about that.
yeah. Let's see.
So
I kind of
speaking of
ran
promos,
over.
by the
Oh,
way,
go
I
ahead.
might as well
Yes.
ask you.
Yes.
Of course, the 10th anniversary promos are amazing and excellent looking, and I'm in a few different. I have my own legendary community as well as popping into some others, and promos are always this bit of contention.
Oh yeah.
You have the folks who just love the promos and just want to collect them all, and then you have the folks that feel like they need them all, and then you have other folks who just appreciate when they're able to get one, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
there's people, you use the word entitled a bit. I do see some people who feel like they're entitled to have access to all the promos, and you have other folks who understand that, oh, it's a special thing, it's for special events to commemorate those things. So I'm wondering if you have a view on that, and if you had to deal with anybody who may be a little adversarial based on how promos have been, because there's 20 promos this time. I don't think that's kind of unprecedented with the
Oh, it
amount of
was
promos at one
nuts.
event.
Oh my goodness, it was nuts when first I thought I remember reading an email. He said there were promos, and I misread the email because he said there are 20 10th anniversary promos, but in the email I misread it. I'm like, there are only 10 anniversary promos. Okay, so it wasn't
Mhm.
until I got there at Gen Con on setup day, and he's like, Simon, I need you to assign a judge that you trust to start randomizing the promos for me, stacking them in such a way. When we give it to players, it's random. And I'm looking at the boxes he's unloading from the pallet. I'm like, Mark, there are like 20 boxes here. Does that mean like you have 20 individual promos? And he's like, yes. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah. To answer your question, I have never
Mhm.
had to deal with a player that's never been confrontational or belligerent with me regarding that particular issue. Never. I've never had a player at Gen Con or when we were at Origins, at Origins either. I've never had to deal with that particular issue. I have seen it come up a lot on like the Facebook groups,
Mhm.
on the Reddit, the subreddit.
Sure.
Um, you know, and like I feel for those people. I was one of those people that was really angry when in 2015 oh my gosh, Upper Deck did their weird thing where like, and they fixed it finally in like the Dimension set. Where you
Oh,
could
with
only
the
get like,
Marvel 3D set?
yes,
Mhm.
yes. What was it, Howard the Duck and Man Thing or Swamp Thing, whatever it was called, and those other guys.
It was them and then
And
the alt art for the core set as well.
yes, and you know what? I like to be a completionist myself, and I felt people's pain. It's like, wow, this is. I feel so. What that whole thing blew up in like 2015, if I remember correctly. It was 2015, late 2014. It's like, like this is why I don't play. This is why I play Legendary, not to sink tons of money into like chase games, like Magic or
Yeah,
Yu-Gi-Oh, blah blah. So I felt for those players. I really did. Like I wanted to play with Howard the Duck, as a
right.
hero, So I was like, but I was not going to pay whatever prices people were asking for on eBay and stuff like that. And so fast forward to now, I am aware of those conversations. People like, I'm in Europe. I can't get to Gen Con, which is fair. That's a completely fair sentiment. And I feel for that person, and I'll never have a chance to get those. Da, da. So,
I
uh,
understand that, and I feel like there's a difference between mechanically unique cards and the promos that have been the promos lately, which have been alternate art, special art of existing mechanic cards. So that's
yes.
what you mentioned with Dimension. So I think there's definitely a line drawn there, and it's Upper Deck's been pretty great with Versus and Legendary about not having the exclusive mechanics. I know
Right.
The Stanley Bystander is the only one right now I think that is mechanically unique. That's still just a promo, which is it's a special bystander. It's
Oh,
fine.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. I completely forgot about that one. So my opinion is kind of, so yes, I started off by saying, I feel for that person in Europe who can't get to Gen Con, is going to have a hard time getting the promos. On the other hand, it's not like you said, they made an exclusive card with an exclusive mechanic.
Mhm.
That it's going to be impossible to get or very difficult to get. It's just pretty much, it's shinier. Okay. It's shiny. I really like the Daredevil one, which is a reprint of the Daredevil rare, the 8.1. Okay. That's all it
The
is.
shiny one, the holographic,
Yeah. Yeah.
somewhat holographic. I'm lucky enough to
Yeah.
actually have that one, and I can attest it looks amazing.
No, it looks amazing. Actually, as I'm talking to you, I'm going through my binder right now. I like the
Nice.
I like the way how on the bottom right, it's recruit cost 8 pops out. And the border line where it divides the picture and the text. There's that gold border line, how it's shiny. The picture just pops and it's beautiful. But that being said, let's say if I didn't have the privilege of being at Gen Con and not getting it, I would not personally, I would not be angry because I still have that card in my, somewhere,
Of course.
So that's how I feel. That I think it's reasonable to make these special promos for, Gen Con is a landmark event for gamers everywhere. I think it is appropriate for them to make promos with a little something unique to commemorate the event. So that's where I land on that. To answer your question, I
Perfect, I
apologize for my
appreciate that.
long-windedness.
No, 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 it's something that's gonna be discussed for a while, the internet's gonna internet sometimes, so I appreciate your your answer on that. Um,
No,
and,
I'm
speak Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interject. I was just going to say, I'm sure people are going to be like, well, Simon can say that because, he's there and he has access, and that's fair too. That's fair. Like, I've never had a problem getting like the alternate art of like some of the masterminds, like Nimrod or
Mhm.
Is it Goblin Queen, Madeline Pryor, when she's
I
like a
think
mastermind?
Secret Wars, they had alternate art for all of those, and they look
Yes,
pretty neat.
yes, yeah. So I had zero issues getting those, and I remember people were like, "Man, I'm not gonna get to Gen Con." Da, da. So I get. So I'm not unsympathetic to those sentiments, but yeah, I do stand by what I said earlier. Anyway, I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier. You're gonna ask me something else.
It's okay. No, there's a lot to talk about. No. So speaking of the promos and the expansions that come with it, I know you said you have a affinity for Revelations because of your
Dog.
bystander in there,
Uh huh.
your dog on there. I love it. By the way, the whole tradition of having the upper deck staff and people associated be the bystanders. I think is incredible. I think it's a really neat touch. It's got to be. Is that extra fun internally? Does everybody get really excited when they find out they're getting a bystander? If you have any information on that.
Oh yes, I do. Because I asked about that. I remember I asked about it when back in 2015 because the brand manager at the time, Jason Brenner, he was like, "I'm so what." Dark City was the one that introduced Special Bystanders,
Mhm.
and the news reporter. So that was Jason Brenner. Okay, and he's like super proud of that car. He's like, "Yeah, that's me." Da da. I'm like, "Oh, so that's a thing." He's like, "Yes, we get long-standing, people who work with the company for a while." Although that got to change a little bit. Like they had like one employee, she didn't work there very long, and she got to be on the card. I'm like, okay, I remember asking the brand manager, like, I've done a lot for you guys. I like to be on a card too. And I had to push for that actually. And it was the art director, this wonderful, wonderful person named Sam Padilla, who hooked me up. She's like, Simon, I know what you look like because we're Facebook friends, but I need pictures of your dog. So I sent her like 20 pictures of Gizmo.
That's great.
So yeah. So anyway, so yes, to answer your question, they do get excited about that. And they really like it. And Upper Deck has just hired. They were in a hiring frenzy this year because they're expanding their game lines rather aggressively, and
Okay.
they need bodies. And so I was talking to some of the new people, and they're like, "Oh, Simon, it's really cool. You're a card. I'm hoping I can be in a card too. Maybe by next year." I'm already talking about it with like research with the product development. Da, da. So yes, they are excited. To answer your
That's
question.
really neat. Yeah, I love that that's a thing, and I think it's really neat that internally they can get excited about that. And speaking of the expansions, is Revelations your favorite expansion? You'd say, or do you have a different favorite one? And do you have a favorite hero from all of Legendary that you just love to use every time?
Oh, okay.
A tough
So I
question,
don't.
I know. So
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. I mean, I always say it with tongue in cheek that Revelations is my favorite. That's only because of the dog. Okay, because of Gizmo.
Hmm.
What did I really? Oh man, it's been a while. Let me see here. I
Or just
mean,
your top sort of 5 something in that ballpark, 'cause
I
I
love
would have trouble with this question.
I love okay, I love Dark City. This was first expansion. It was a game changer for the base game. I mean, I can still remember when I unwrapped Dark City and I looked at the additional mechanic of just like, like, oh, there's special bystanders. Cool. You know, or I like how now that like some of the it was X Force, right? That had like Domino, and she's
Yes.
got like a printed fight and a printed recruit. I thought that was really cool as well. I loved Apocalypse as a mastermind. I hate fighting against him, but I love old school Apocalypse. Where like
As you
there's that
fight and
one
you fight and
scene.
you fight and you fight.
Yes, because if you hit that one tack of his over and over, it's like his shield.
Right.
It's his crappy floating shield. And just wanted to like cry. So Dark City had made the most impact. I really like Fantastic Four a lot. I think thematically that was I think I think you'll agree with me here. The game does such a wonderful job of tying in theme with mechanics.
Oh, it's
Like,
marvelous, yeah.
you
Pun
know,
intended.
yeah, like you feel like take base core set Wolverine, where like you're drawing extra cards when you get his superpower to go off, right? So in my head, as I'm drawing extra cards and I can generate, I'm picturing him going to a frenzy, slashing with his claws. I know that sounds super nerdy, but that's how I feel.
Oh, no, I 100% agree, and that's one of the big reasons the flavor of the game is one of the reasons why people love it, and I know, I'll speak specifically a great example of that is, Legendary DXP and what they did with that, and how
Hmm.
everything is reskinned with IP, and it still plays like Legendary, it's still fun, but, for me personally, and I did have fun with DXP, but there's knowing what the characters in Marvel and being able to make that, association in your head just adds that extra level, and so
Correct.
that was a great way to kind of reinforce that, oh, this is happening, this is why I love one of the reasons why I love this game all the way up to
Right.
the current expansions. I noticed that a lot with Doctor Strange too, with how you're bringing out artifacts and taking them away and manipulating things a little bit, making the bargains really feels like, and you're not using direct attack that often, especially
Yeah.
with heroes that's like Clay, or the ancient one, you're spending recruit to do everything because he's not a direct fighter. It constantly feels like that. You can always imagine the characters doing what they're doing in your head, and that's a big part of the fun.
Oh no, totally. The other one that I like, and this has nothing to do with my personal like like my personal enjoyment with the game, but I'm always grateful to World War Hulk
Hmm.
because it will always be one of my top five. Because World War Hulk, I used World War Hulk showcased in 2018. That was the flagship legendary product at Gen Con at that time, and I was able to get so this is gonna sound really heartless and cold. I want when I design the setup for the Swiss rounds, I need to make it so like either the players are going to kill the mastermind really quickly, which is really hard to do, or the scheme in combination with the mastermind is going to kill the players really quickly. Quickly is the operative word here because I don't want the tables to go to end of round procedure, okay? Because that slows down my tournament. So it's always in my best interest to keep things moving along very quickly. And that 2018, I still remember the scheme. It was the cytoplasm spike invasion.
Ah, that'll
Okay.
do it.
And I used it with General Ross. And oh my God, players would raise their hands in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I get 50 minutes for the round, 20 minutes. And like judge, because they have to call for a judge to verify who got first, second, third, and fourth place before we input into the system. And they're like, yeah, we just got murdered. And I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry you were all murdered, but thank you for playing, and
That's a great quote.
yeah, and it was, and that one gave me a lot of anxiety because World War Hulk had the transformation mechanic,
Mhm.
and I'm always leery of like when there's an extra mechanic that introduces like another physical element onto the table because it could get lost or shuffled in the wrong way or blah 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 blah. So and then this had to do like the hero cards I had used. I remember like there like there was like Bruce Banner was there, so that means his in his transformation pile there are 5. It's called Savage Hulk Unleashed.
Yep.
Okay, so that had to be kept there. I don't like to burden the players with more things to keep track of. So I had like anxiety the night before. I'm like, oh my god, what happens? Da, 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 But no, it worked out beautifully. None of my rounds went to time. It was smooth like clockwork, and I had so much fun with that. And that one, that in 2018, that was really fun because so Upper Deck usually for the final table will let me do whatever I want. Usually I have constraints. They're like, Simon, this is our flagship product. I want you to incorporate the flagship product into the 5K. Fine. At the final table, usually it's because they've run out of ideas at this point, and they're like, Simon, do what you want. So for 2018, it was World War Hulk, right? So I asked Mark Shaunessy, I'm like, I want them to fight King Hulk, okay? But I want to redo the whole World War Hulk story. So so the scheme, here it is, here's my notes. The scheme is called Break the Planet Asunder. And the scheme requires 7 heroes. So I told Mark, I'm like, we're going to use the Illuminati. I'm going to use Hulkbuster Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt, Mr. Fantastic, Professor X, Namor, the Submariner, and Black Panther. These are all from other sets, okay? Yeah. And Mark was like, well, Simon, I can't open all that product for you just to grab 14 cards. I'm like, no, I will use my own. And to this day, it's been a point of contention. Mark is just looking out for me. He's like, Simon, I think that's really nice of you, but I don't know. I'm still divided that you use your own personal stuff. I've been using my own personal stuff for the final table since 2015. It doesn't bother me because I can see the table, and the players, they're pretty respectful of my stuff when I bring my own hero cards and stuff like that to make for the hero deck. So we did it. It was really cool. It didn't go as well as I expected. They had I remember, like, that was one of the fastest final table games. Like, I think they all died less than 20 minutes. Like, it was just done. It was actually, to be honest, it was kind of a letdown because the villain deck was just like bad luck. Like one thing came out of another, they lost control of the board, blah blah. So yeah, but no, that's yeah. So that's why I always have a soft spot for World War Hulk. Anyway.
That's great. So, you are able to do what you want with the last one, partially because you provide your own cards. That's pretty neat to know. So, was that? I think I saw the final setup for this year was a Multiverse of Madness setup. Is that correct?
Oh yes, that one was fun. So okay, so again, I'll give your listeners a sneak peek behind the curtain.
Please.
By April. So April, Mark tells me, okay, so I'm like, what's the deal? What do I have to work with? So he's like, okay, I really want, originally I wanted to do Black Widow, but I don't think that's going to make it on the boat in time because everything, the pandemic really screwed up with supply lines and the supply chain. So we're going to go with Black Panther. I'm like, cool. What do you want me to do for top 16? He's like, oh man, just you know what? Just use Doctor Strange. I'm like, fine. So I think that was like early May. By June, he was like, okay, I have good news. I got like prototype copies of Black Widow. So we're gonna do Black Widow at the final table. So that was the original plan. Okay. And people will love it and everything. It's not without precedent, where like you do something completely different for the final table, because there was one year, you said you played the game starting around 2018, right? So you missed the whole evil, like, when are you guys gonna reprint Fantastic Four? Because there was like a time when Fantastic Four, it was gone.
I missed the Fantastic Four one. I was there for, I think, when Dark City wasn't getting a reprint, and that's still kind of going on. But I did hear about Fantastic Four and some of the reasons why it was gone for so long.
Yes.
But
yes. Yeah. So there was one year when, after like 2.5 years, like we had Fantastic Four again. So we used Fantastic Four at the final table, and people were like, "Oh, what? You got it?" Like, yes, it's at the booth. So
Wow.
anyway, so Black Widow was going to be okay. So I'm like, okay, we'll use Black Widow. He's got one copy of Black Widow. We're going to use it at the final table. I asked Mark, well, Mark, can I see what I'm dealing with? So I have signed a non-disclosure agreement with Upper Deck in blood, essentially. So I always get like access to the cards in PDF file so I could look at them to make educated judgments. Sometimes I used to like print them out as proxies to play test to see what works.
Sure.
Okay, in a tournament environment. So I'm looking at the Black Widow setup. I'm like, oh, Taskmaster's gonna be awesome. We'll go with that. So I'm all excited. So by mid-July, Mark is like, Simon, so we're gonna have to like axe that plan because the plan is now to demo Black Widow at the booth. So we have 4 copies. There are going to be 4 copies of Black Widow in the entire convention building. We will have, and actually there's going to be more than 4 copies. There's like 10 or something like that. But we're going to have 4 of them. And so change of plan, use Black Widow instead for top 16. I'm like, okay, that's fine. No big deal. So I said, what about the final table? He's like, you come up with something. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, well, I would like to make it thematic. And he's like, Simon, I trust you. You always try to make it fun. Go nuts. So I was like, okay, what were the movies that just came out this year for Marvel? Like the first one in March or April was like Doctor Strange, right? And then we had Thor: Love and Thunder. Oh my gosh, Bagel. I really tried to make Thor: Love and Thunder work. I racked my brains. Yeah. It was tough. And I'm like, you know what? I don't get paid enough to waste this much time to make a setup based on the movie, So I'm like, let me look at Doctor Strange, and I'm thinking, okay, and I still have my copy of Villains. We'll use Doctor Strange as the mastermind. So we'll use Black Bolt from Realm of Kings, Mr. Fantastic, Professor X. Okay, and then oh man, there's no like Peggy Carter, who is Captain America or Captain Britain, right? I'm like, dang, what do I use for that? And I'm like, oh wait, Maria Rambeau is there, Nebula or Photon. She's in Revelations. I'm stuck on the 5th hero. I need 5 heroes. What do I do? And so I Google. I'm like, I think my search term was like legendary setup, multiverse of madness theme. I don't have high hopes I'm going to get anything good. My hopes are very low. I get a hit on some website, and they're talking, and they give the suggestions like, you should use Ultron in your hero deck. And their rationale, because there's that scene, if you remember, when Doctor Strange is being led into the Illuminati, there's those reprogrammed Ultron bots, right? They're leading him into the chamber. I'm like, that's perfect. I had to reread what Ultron does, and I'm like, whoa, this guy's pretty good because he could dodge. And anytime I could chuck a card to draw a card is really good. And
he's amazing with anybody attack and otherwise.
Right. My fear was, is this going to be too easy? Because there is an unexpected synergy with Photon from Revelations, because Photon goes like, to do a lot of Photon's moves, you have to chuck a card, and that, and by using the dodge effect on Ultron, you get Photon stuff. So it's like, oh my goodness. But that didn't happen. Anyway, so I'm like, this is perfect. And so I run it by Mark, and I'm like, I'm kind of stuck on a scheme. This is what I've got for heroes. I want to use Doctor Strange, blah, blah, blah. I want to find a way to incorporate Wanda somehow. So he originally suggested the scheme from Dark City. It's the one where like, you're turning, it's the one where like you put like the 14 copies of Jean Grey into the hero deck. And like, as they come out,
the transform citizens into demons.
Yes, perfect. That's the one. He says, just use that, but instead of Jean Grey, use Scarlet Witch. I'm like, oh, am I allowed to kind of like mess with the scheme setup parameters a little bit? He's like, yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. So that's when I came up with like, no. Why did the Illuminati in the movie? Why were they so scared of Doctor Strange? Because their Doctor Strange smashed realities together, right?
Mm.
So that's why I use that scheme, smash two dimensions together for the theme. And that scheme requires like you put in an extra villain group. I told Mark I'm going to throw Scarlet Witch in there. She's just there for points. They can't recruit her. And he was like, sure, whatever. And that's how that was born, essentially.
I
So
love hearing how that came together, piece by piece. That's
yeah,
really neat. I love putting setups together, and that sounds like that's a great story about how that came together. And I saw that Wanda was in the villain deck, and you didn't use exactly the scheme, so I was like, wait, why is she in there? I guess she's a villain
yeah,
with attack to her cost, and that's
yes.
I love
That
that.
that's exactly what it was because I wanted to keep it thematic, and I'm really big on that. The one I'm really proud of, actually, is from 2019. Yes, that was with Oh yeah, duh. That was Revelations. How could I forget that? But that had House of M in
Mm,
Revelations, right? And there was a promo with that, and I remember, you know, I was kind of tired because up until that point, we had like really hard masterminds at the final table. Like with X-Men, it was like freaking Dark Phoenix, and everyone just got like
right.
everyone just got murdered. And you know what, I was not happy with that because I can tell the players they were just trying to have a good time at that point, and the board was just being brutal to them, and it made me think about certain things. So with House of M for 2019 for the final table, I told Mark, dude, I'm using Magneto. And he laughed at me. He's like, Magneto? Core set Magneto? I'm like, yeah. He's like, isn't it going to be too easy? I'm like, who cares if it is? And I actually might have the players start racing, see who could hit Magneto first and make it super exciting, you know?
Sure.
And he was like, okay, go for it. And yeah, so like, yeah, the scheme's House of M. I'm looking at it now. I'm like, I have my Microsoft Word document here. It's like, yeah, there was like, I made a special customized villain group, of 8 cards, which includes like 2 of Storm from Villains, 2 of Scarlet Witch from Villains, the Black Panther from Villains, and 1 Miss Marvel from Civil War, 1 Sebastian Shaw Black King from X-Men, and 1 Apocalyptic Magneto from Secret War Volume 1. That was
I
like that.
love
That
those
was,
so
you
much.
know, so that was my customized villain group. And in the hero deck, oh, why did I do that? The hero deck has Wolverine, Cyclops, Rogue, Kitty Pryde, Wasp, and I put in Howard the Duck for chuckles, I suppose. So I guess this scheme required me to put more than 1 hero group in. I guess I can't remember what House of M did exactly. So yeah, but no, that was a brutal final table. That went on for a while because they were racing, to see, and it was really interesting to see that the moves in play were like, you can tell when the players were like, I'm not hitting Magneto anymore. I want the game to end. I want the scheme to win. So when the game ends, I'm ahead in points and I'll be first place.
Sure.
So it was interesting to see that shift. So yeah, I'm sorry. I felt like I just monopolized the mic the entire time. I got really excited talking
Oh,
about
no,
this.
no, I love it. I love hearing all the all the behind the scenes about how the setups are built. And so I assume when you build those, it's mostly based on theme and flavor, and then of course the mechanics will work themselves out. But you do put consideration into that, which I do like. I'm curious, have you ever checked out anybody else's custom setups online? There's a lot of folks who do that. I've been playing a series of MCU games as a member of my community named Off the Cuff, and he
Uh
has
huh.
designed MCU setups for not just every MCU film and TV show, but every Marvel TV project since Iron Man.
Oh wow! No, I haven't seen that. Could you give me the link
Yeah,
later?
absolutely. I have, yeah. If you go to in my Discord, just type in exclamation MCU, get a link. Actually, I can probably do it right
Oh,
here. But
nice.
yeah. So he's been designing it, and I've been playing his setups. So I started with, and I've been putting them up on YouTube. So the first one I did was Iron Man 1, the
Oh,
first one, and playing the setup. And he puts a lot of thought and some descriptions about why he puts what he does. And I do those every Tuesday night, and I just did number 50 on Tuesday, and that was Endgame Part 2.
oh
So
wow!
I've done every single one all the way through, and it's so much fun to play through these setups based on properties that you've seen. Um, and like we said at the beginning, one of the things you can do with Legendary is make thematic setups, and there's not much more thematic than that. So yeah, I'll definitely send that to you. But shout out to Off the
No.
Cuff for designing all. He continues to do it every time I knew he's going to design a She-Hulk one now. Every time a new thing comes out, and I'm going to try to play through them all. But it's a blast.
You said some of your playthroughs are already on your YouTube channel, right?
Yes, I have a playlist
Okay.
specifically for the MCU games as
Okay.
well.
I'll have
So,
to check that out. I subscribe to your YouTube channel, by the way.
oh, thank you so
So
much.
yeah, no problem, no problem. Bagel, before I forget, there's something I like to speak about, if you don't mind, if I
Absolutely, please.
take it. So, I know there are players out there when they go to Gen Con, the 5K. I have seen this sentiment expressed to me. It's like, oh, it's really competitive, and I don't mind, but I wish you guys would focus, like how we play at my house or on my kitchen table. And I am very cognizant of those sentiments. Um, uh, so currently, right now, it used to be like before the 5K, or like the days we don't have the 5K. We would do like either like demo games of Legendary or a win a box, which is pretty much like 5 players. They jump in. It's competitive. Person with the most points gets a box. Whatever. Okay. Um, I had to push for a competitive, not competitive, excuse me. I had to push for a team event for Gen Con. And I finally got my wish like I talked about it with Mark for 2 years, and he was initially resistant to it. Not because he's a bad and evil person, but he had some logistical concerns, which I had to prove to him that I could address. And so finally in 2019, we started doing team events at Gen Con, where like you play cooperatively. And how this works is, so I give you 2 hours. Okay. I give you 2 hours. You're trying to beat the board. We set up something super difficult, usually. Um, and yeah, you got 2 hours. If you lose, you lose. If you win, like there's still like rare stuff Mark has hidden in like the depths of like the organized play vault that he gives you, like a super cool play mat to one. So each player gets like a foil Thor. It's like I think it's like the rare Thor or the common Thor. I can't remember. It's the card's completely foil. Okay, they get all the players get a foil Thor, and they get another foil common card of another hero. I can't remember. Then there's the Loki Mastermind, which is the clear one, the acetate. Okay.
Gotcha.
The table gets awarded one of those. They have to figure out who gets that one. Okay. Usually it's resolved amicably if they. And then there's a playmat, one playmat as well. And that's what they get if they win. The reason I wanted to talk about this for you listeners out there, I'm going to push very hard for next year. Not guaranteed yet. I want to do an actual event where maybe it's like 8 tables of 4 players each. So each table is their own team. Okay. And they're trying to beat their boards. Okay.
Right.
And if they lose, they get knocked out. If everyone gets knocked out, at that point we'll look at, I haven't decided yet. We'll look at like the victory points earned, and then whatever who has high victory points will they'll move up the bracket, let's say. But the idea I would like to do that, no, that will not replace the traditional 5K. Okay, but I might do that like on another day, like on a Friday or something, or Thursday. I'm gonna push really hard for that
That's
next year,
great.
because I really do enjoy the cooperative play of Legendary.
Yeah, I think people will really enjoy that. I do have to ask, based on the talking about the team events, are you familiar with the way that sites like Legendary Leagues score their tournaments? I know you mentioned logistics and stuff for an in-person physical thing, but I'm wondering if you've seen how that scoring method works. Have you heard of
No,
points per
no.
turn before?
Oh no, I haven't. How do they do it?
Okay. This is something that Travel Sized, who's playtester for the game, you probably are familiar with him, and some other folks on Board Game Geek put this together. And then I adopted that for the tournaments that I run within my community, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting. So and it's team events. That's why I bring it up. So it's a they do it solo. I do two-handed or two-player. And when you play your game, you get 4 rankings, and your score is based on inverse rankings with everybody else who played.
Okay.
So basically, you get it assigned an average of points based on how many people have played, and you get a ranking that way. So you get there's 4 categories. There's if you won or lost, or win or didn't win. So it's a draw and lose score the same. You
Okay.
have you have turns. So there's a turn count, and the
Oh.
after you finish the game, the better. But if you lose, you get added 99 turns. So in this order, it's better to win fast, win slow, lose fast. Losing fast is the worst, gets you the lowest rank there. Then you're also ranked with your points per turn. So you're not ranked directly on VP, but it's your VP compared to your turn count. And then the last one is escapes. You're counted how many escapes have occurred. And those 4 different things give you a ranking. And then the person who has the highest overall rankings when all the points are added up is at the top. And
Oh, I like that.
I'd be
That
happy to share more about it with you. That's how I just did. I did 2 tournaments so far, and it's obviously very different. It's an online tournament, etc.
sure.
But we've done that, and the way that I'm running these tournaments, and like based on what Legendary Leagues does, is I do pods, and it's double elimination. So this time I had 8 pods, or pods of 8 or so, 6 to 8, and everybody gets to play their setup twice and submits their results. They get to pick the best one they think they've done, and they submit those. And then it does I have a sheet that does all the rankings for them, and the
Mhm.
highest amount of points moves on. And we had like 53 people enter this time, and
Wow.
took about 9 weeks, and we just got to the number one winner just last week, and I'm going to be playing a setup based on them, and they get little rewards within our Discord. But uh, we started when I started doing tournaments, it was purely VP based. Whoever got the most VP wins. And what we found was a lot of folks were farming for VP. Once they got to a point where they know they can win the game, they're not threatened. They just
Yeah,
dragged the game on, and people, that takes time. People didn't really like that.
sure.
But when they play with the points per turn method, it's encourages you to finish the game quickly if you can. You want to,
Yeah.
and because you want to end the game as fast as possible, and then that contributes to your score. So I don't know how well that would do in a physical setting, but I do know that it is probably the most popular. I do post tournament polls, etc. As I do, we want to change the scoring method. How do you feel about this? And overwhelmingly, this is the runaway choice for how to score these kind of things.
No, I really like it. I'm already thinking of the logistical ramifications and what I would
Sure,
have to
sure.
do. But it's I think it's doable. And I'll be honest, I like that more because there are more factors in determining your ranking, right? Instead of just like one number, your victory points card, or like your win lose state against the mastermind. There's multiple factors that play into it. I like that.
It's interesting because you don't say if you draw or lost, but if you draw, that means you took longer to lose, which means that it's going to
Oh yeah.
be worse, or it's going to be better than if you lost quickly. So that factors out in the turn count. So you don't have to put that in. And for the tournament, by the way, I let people pick 2 of the 5 heroes in their setup. So they get to pick those, and that's a whole other wrench. You don't have to do that because I do my weekly randomizer league.
Oh yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
plays the exact same setup with the exact same heroes, but they're all ranked with the points per turn method. And afterwards, I'd be happy to share.
Mm.
I have spreadsheets. I have all these things. I can share that with you if you're interested in checking those out.
Oh no, totally. Yeah, please send those
Absolutely.
to me. I I,
Yeah,
I
you
I
can
love stuff like that. I love stuff like that.
league.bageltopgames.com has all of my games, and I started. You can see, and on if you go there, I started with the traditional scoring method where you just count the VP, and then about halfway through, we transitioned into the method based on legendary leagues, and which is interesting. There's one
Mm,
thing for two-handed teams that is, I think you mentioned tiebreakers, and I had that same trouble too, trying to
mhm.
figure out what's the best tiebreaker because ties do happen, and is it total VP or number of bystanders rescued? And one that I really like is a point
Uh-huh.
differential. So it's kind of a
Okay.
measure of did the people playing do equally well in building decks and getting VP. So for two-player or two-handed, it's the difference between points between the two victory piles. So the smaller
Okay.
number would rank higher in a tiebreaker because they were able to build two more equally successful strategies.
Correct. As opposed to another table where like one
Mhm.
player pretty much carried the entire table. So that first play, the player who did really well at that table, he may have like 30 VP, while second place is a far like
Right, for
8
and which if
points.
it's a team event, that might be a popular
Yeah.
thing, but that's something that you can't do with
Yeah.
solo
No.
that we're doing.
Again, I just wanted to come here and thank you again for having me here. You're a very well respected voice in the community. I was talking to the new marketing person for Upper Deck during Gen Con, and I had mentioned your name, and she's like, "Oh, is Bagel here? I'd love to meet them in person." I'm like, "No, he couldn't make it, unfortunately, from what I understand." But yeah, I know the company is super grateful for all you do, being an advocate for the game. As an enthusiast of the game, I'm grateful for all your contributions. So you're the man.
Oh, that's very kind, and Upper Deck's been like, Jade is wonderful, she's been communicating with me on, Upper Deck's been great, they've been sending me early expansions, so giving me an opportunity to review them and do
Yes.
content on them and stream them for everybody, and so they've been super supportive. So you did mention that, you used villains for some of the events that for the competitive aspect, that villains brought to the forefront. There's only been a couple of there's one villain space set and expansion, of course. Let's say that that was leaned into and there was an expansion that was specifically designed purely for competitive play. How do you personally feel that that would be received by the community, by people involved in tournaments, if that was a thing?
I got to, well, so my understanding, the design intent, at least this is what the brand manager at the time told me, like they wanted villains to cater to the more competitive player. Okay. And so your question to me right now is like, what happens if another expansion came along in the lines of villains where it really like promotes competitive play?
Yeah, let's say, how do you think that would be received if there was like villains, but it was ramped up so everything's competitive? Like it's designed so that you can't, you're not really you're still trying to defeat the mastermind, but
It
you're
it like the maybe the mechanics of that expansion like promote you like really hindering the progress of your fellow players,
right.
like something like that, right? Um, See, I'll be honest, I personally would not enjoy something like that. That's me. If I had to guess, I think the community would probably split. People are like, oh, okay, this could be fun. If you just want to like mess with your friends for a night or two. Instead of playing like regular legendary, we're just going to be out. Yeah, we still want to be the best person at the table, but at the expense of other people. Yeah, that's definitely kind of tough.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, I'm not sure how that would be. My guess would be a 50-50 split. I think people would be
Okay.
like, yeah, not my cup of tea. Other people would be like, okay, whatever. So yeah, I mean, with villains itself, I mean, the mechanics are brutal. Or like, I think it's like Magneto. Like, if you do something, you
Mhm.
give another player a
The
bindings, which is
bindings are
synonymous.
the bane of a lot of people's existence when they're randomized.
Yeah, right. The bindings, which is synonymous with wounds. It's like, oh my goodness, and it's like, really, we're doing this? Okay, fine. Yeah. So that's my answer to your question. I think it'd be a 50 split.
I've got one more. So, thank you for explaining how these tournaments work and all the thought that went, how the evolution of how the tournament scoring went. I want to know, what advice do you have for somebody who specifically wants to come to something like the 5K and they specifically want to do well with this style of tournament and like they're planning on going to Gen Con next year? What advice would you have for them if they really want to do well in these?
Oh wow. See that it's not like they can prepare at home because the set we use is gonna be something that just came out, right? So there's no way for them to prepare in terms of card knowledge. Actually, the one thing, and Upper Deck will probably be happy I say this, is like, you know what? Since it's always going to be a set that showcases Gen Con, and Upper Deck always has their blog, right? That tells you,
Mhm.
like, hey, this is the mechanic for the new set. I mean, they did it with Black Panther. Like, oh, we're going to have like wounds on villains now, or here's the ambush, but for heroes. I mean, so maybe keep up with the blog so you're not blindsided by the mechanics. Now, at the tables, I have the rules insert there so everyone can look at the rules insert so they know what they're doing. Also, they can also ask a judge for clarification on a rules interaction. Um, How to prepare really? You know what? Learn how to shuffle quickly.
Good one.
Randomizing your deck, your personal, as you're building your deck, randomizing that quickly will help the game move faster. Also, know how to watch other people as they're shuffling. The legendary players are generally honest for the most part, but but some of them are very casual, right? So they're not used to competitive cutthroat play, and sometimes they don't realize the way how they shuffle, like it's super casual. It's not true randomization,
Mhm.
and they can leave themselves open to accusations of cheating. You know, that didn't happen this year. It didn't happen in 2019 either. It did happen in 2018. I remember that distinctly. Why I was watching a table and the person, no, he's never played in tournament setting before. He thought this is the way he shuffles when he plays with his kids. He didn't mean anything by it. So I just said, sir, I need you to shuffle again, please, to make sure it's sufficiently randomized. And he got it,
Sure.
So yeah, knowing to sufficiently randomize your deck in a way so you won't be looked upon with suspicious eyes. Be very careful when drawing your cards. You don't draw another card by accident, because that's bad. I mean, a lot of this is like tournament management stuff, really. What else? But specific to the game, yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. I'm sorry, it's a very boring answer.
That totally makes sense because 'cause they're not gonna know what to set up ahead of time, but paying attention to what so it's more likely than not gonna be the new sets that have just released or are going to be releasing. So,
Yeah. No, it's
interesting.
you. Yeah, 9 times out of 10. Now, if I get my way with a team, like a team event where teams are competing against each other, I might have to draw upon an older set. It depends, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, so like there's set releases. Usually there's like two small boxes before the next Gen Con or something like that, or there's one medium, and they drop a medium box usually at Gen Con, although they didn't do it this time. Black Panther's a small box; it's only 100 cards. So, yeah, it makes me sad. I have to say this: I don't think they're ever going to go back to the large box model.
That does
It
come up
makes
a
me,
lot. I the last thing we heard is that, it's not a never, it's just we would really need a good reason to do it.
yeah,
Do
no,
why
I'm
why do
sorry.
you say that? Why do you think, that, that's
I
something
just,
they're not gonna return to?
I think they're getting. I think it's honestly, I think it's more of a content slash value slash profit thing for them. Because if they pack, okay, this is my own personal opinion. I don't speak for
Of course,
Upper Deck here.
of course.
Okay, I got the disclaimer. I think if they, so the large box would come out once a year, if I remember correctly. I think that's how it worked, right? Was it once or twice? I can't remember now. But I have a feeling that was just so much content they had to prep for, and it was just so much work because they have a lot. They're always planning like 3 quarters ahead. Okay, like playtesting.
Sure.
Like right now, as we speak, I'm sure they're already playtesting a legendary set that will drop in spring of 2023. Okay,
Right.
that's how far ahead they are. That I know for a fact.
I remember some
Um,
playtesters talking to me about, "Oh, you think you've been waiting long for, Messiah Complex, et cetera. We've known about it for
right.
years." So,
So I think that's the main reasons why it's to give their development team like some breathing room, okay? Essentially, and you do the small box. I remember Mark Shaunessy told me initially they were scared that they were not going to be able to fit 200 cards in a small box. I
okay.
remember that. That was the hesitation.
That's so
But then,
interesting.
with Revelations, it kind of worked out well. It's like, oh yeah, we can shove 200 cards in this box. It's fine. Nothing's gonna get damaged or whatever. And again, because packaging, one of the you know, uh, in product line development, when you look at your line of games, one of your things that causes a loss is your production cost, your packaging cost. A box is more expensive. It adds to your cost more
Sure.
than the small box thing. So there are unfortunately economics involved. That's my guess anyway. So yeah, so I don't know how we got into the topic of the large box. I think I brought that up. But I'm
Oh,
sad
no.
that there are more large boxes. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me?
What is your favorite part about, running events like this? So what keeps you coming back to, do these kind of events and judging and organizing the tournaments for Legendary?
Oh, it's the community. I don't have to hesitate. I don't even think about that. It's the community. Everyone is just really chill and nice. We've come together to take part in an activity that we all love, right? Except it's organized play, so it's more organized, and just generally have a good time. Also, Upper Deck treats me very well. They appreciate my efforts. I judge for various games for a while now, for about 20 years now, and not every company treats judges, their volunteers, like the way how Upper Deck has treated me. They've recognized my contributions, and again, I'm not doing this like for like fame or glory or whatever. I do it because it's fun for me, but it's definitely nice to be recognized for your hard work in any endeavor, and Upper Deck has done that for me, so they took good care of me, or they take good care of me.
Of course, and
So yeah.
it's got to be a testament to all you do for them that they keep having you back for these events. I hear a lot of great
Oh,
things.
oh yeah. I mean, sure. Yes, we'll go with that for the official answer. Yeah, sure. No, that's no. They've been most kind, and yeah, it's good time. But no, the community of players is wonderful. I've made new friends because of the community. It's always nice to see people back. Oh my gosh, during the pandemic when we didn't have events, it was really sad. It was
Yeah.
like the saddest thing, and so now that things are gearing up again. It's looking good. Yeah, that's
That
my
that
answer.
that's great. I can definitely relate to that with the community that I've put together and all the people who are involved in Legendary, and just you just can't find the nicer people than some of the people who are into this game. And I do have a one small question piggybacking on that.
Sure.
If there's anybody who's interested in trying to set up some organized play or doing any sort of event at their local game store, is that something that is possible? And what are the steps they can do to make that happen?
So they want to contact Mark Shaunessy at Upper Deck. I'm going to punt the ball to him for that
Okay.
interview, because that's one of the many roles he plays. He's the organized play specialist currently. So yes, so that yeah, to contact him. Usually, all the Upper Deck people, they have the same like email like structure. Hold on for a second. Let
Sure.
me look it up. Here we go. So it would be Mark_Shaunessy at upperdeck.com. And Shaunessy, his last name is spelled SHAUNESSY. So yeah, so it'd be Mark_Shaunessy at upperdeck.com. Yeah, because they all have that same email. Oh, he's gonna hate me
Excellent.
now. He's like, Simon, I got a bunch of emails. So no. Yeah.
Well, I'll put that in the description. Please only email if you're interested in doing some kind of organized play at your local event for your
Yeah.
local legendary community. Because this game it's great solo, but it's also so much fun to play with a group with people
Yeah.
that you
No.
know or
Yep.
that you don't know and that you want to get to know.
Okay.
Well, Simon, I really appreciate the time today. It's very kind of you to not to offer and then come on to record with me.
No, no, thank you so much for having me. I'll be honest, I felt self-conscious, like just like sending you that message out of the blue. But I remember seeing on somewhere where you asked people, it's like, hey, if anyone wants to share their experience at Gen Con. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh, he should have people. I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe he would appreciate, a behind the scenes look to share with the viewers or the listeners. So yeah. So thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. No, it was invaluable. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you for coming on. I guess what is this podcast? This is my first episode, if that's what this becomes.
Oh, fantastic.
But
Yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. And again, oh yeah, don't forget to send me those links to those cool resources. That
oh,
yeah,
absolutely. I'll do that
yeah.
right after
the-
we finish this.
Okay.
And thank you everybody for listening. And all the links we talked about are in the description.
Mm.
Keep playing Legendary. Stay tuned to Upper Deck's Twitch channel, upper_deck. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.